Thanks so much, Laura. I have to turn off the recording in progress sign there. Okay, great. All right, let me just share my screen real quick. Go. All right. Move this window away. Yes, I would love to move this window away. Thank you. Okay, everybody seeing it? Whoops. I'm not hearing anything. Should I be hearing things?
No, but we can all see.
Okay, great. Thank you, Armando. Thank you. All right. So I'm Amy Fowler. I'm with the City of Seattle's Office of Sustainability and Environment, as Laura said. And I just want to thank everybody for being here and thank Laura for having me here. I work to support building owners in the City of Seattle comply with the state law and the new Seattle Building Emission Performance Standard, helping them reduce their energy use and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. So today we're going to do a little bit of a walkthrough with the state law and then talk about the city's building emission performance standard before talking about a technical assistance program that the city has for building owners, and then give you a little bit of a sneak peek of a new grant program that we have that we'll be launching early next year before I turn it over to my Seattle City Light colleagues. So before we dive into the laws, let's get a little context on why we care so much about climate pollution from buildings. In Seattle, they're one of the largest sources of climate pollution. 37% of our greenhouse gas emissions are from buildings. Transportation is larger, but we tend to replace our cars and trucks a lot more often than we replace our buildings. And so the laws are designed to help us reduce emissions from those existing buildings. And we sometimes get asked, why are we focusing on the bigger buildings? It's because that's the bigger sources of the problem. Based on our 2019 benchmarking data, these buildings are all benchmarking in the city of Seattle and reporting their energy use and emissions. More than 80% of the emissions come from buildings larger than 50,000 square feet. So that's our 17% of the emissions come from multifamily over 50,000 square feet, 65% from non-residential over 50,000 square feet. And the multifamily buildings greater than 20,000 square feet account for nearly 25% of our emissions. And in the city of Seattle, we are blessed with very clean energy, and you'll hear a little bit more about that, very low emissions electricity. So over 90% of the emissions in Seattle are coming from burning fossil fuels like gas and oil in the buildings or to provide the steam for the district energy system, the district steam that a lot of the buildings in downtown Seattle are connected to. The environmental and health impacts from fossil fuels don't just come from burning them at the buildings themselves. It comes from all along the distribution system and the extraction of the fuels. And the burden of those pollutants is borne more highly by people of color. So now let's dive into the laws. First, we're going to talk about the state law, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the state law because I understand from Laura you're going to have a deeper presentation on that. But when you get these slides, you can always click on this link and learn more. But just as a quick snapshot, the goal of the law is to reduce energy consumption and emissions. In this law, the buildings have to meet energy targets, so they're reducing their energy use intensity, the energy per square foot. It requires them to plan, do some energy management planning, and have an operation and management program. They use the Energy Star Portfolio Manager to track their building's performance. It's divided into two tiers based on the square footage of the buildings. Tier 1, commercial buildings over 50,000 square feet, and Tier 2, commercial and multifamily buildings 20 to 50,000 square feet. And the owners should have all gotten, to whom the law applies, should have all gotten something from the Department of Commerce. Utilities are involved in the rule by providing assistance and savings, and you'll hear some more about that in a few minutes. Little snapshot here on the deadlines, and a note there at the top. A year before the compliance deadline is that you have to have your documents in place. You need to have done your benchmarking, and you need to have your plans prepared and have been using your plans for a year before your deadline. So the first deadlines are for Tier 1, the largest buildings, larger than 220 gross square feet. That deadline is June 1st of 2026. It's hard to believe 2026 is a real year, but it is. It's coming faster than we think. Tier 2, their deadline is June 1st, 2027, and then it keeps going as the buildings get smaller and smaller. And the multifamily here, over 20,000 square feet, is also part of that Tier 2. In the interest of time, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the early adopter incentive programs that the Department of Commerce has available. Suffice to say, they have a Tier 1 program for buildings that fall into Tier 1. It is 85 cents a square foot. It requires the buildings to be pretty significantly out of compliance, more than 15 points above the target. That's available now. They are working on a Tier 2 early adopter incentive program. Both of these programs are or will be available to multifamily buildings. The Tier 2 has a much larger amount of money available, 150 million, which makes sense because there are a lot more of those smaller size buildings out there in the state of Washington. And again, this is a statewide incentive available to all buildings. So now let's talk a little bit about the City of Seattle's Building Emissions Performance Standard. It passed last December, so we are embarking in the rulemaking phase now. So where the state law was focused on reducing emissions, reducing energy, and buildings had to meet energy targets, here in the Seattle BEPS, they have to meet emissions targets. So buildings have an emissions per square foot target that they need to meet. There's verifying their benchmarking results with independent verification. There's reporting, documenting their equipment and their performance and their plan to achieve the targets. And again, they use the Energy Star Portfolio Manager as part of that work. And there'll also be a city BEPS reporting tool that will be in place by the time that reporting is required. It covers commercial and multifamily buildings that are greater than 20,000 square feet. These are the buildings that have been benchmarking in the city of Seattle for several years. So timeline-wise, there's a lot going on in this slide. But the bottom line is that the compliance timeline depends on the size of a building and the type of a building. So right now, we are in the policy development and support program phase and working on the director's rule, doing the rulemaking. And then the early phases of compliance start with verifying energy and emissions, doing the planning, and starting that reduction work that you identify being necessary for your buildings. And then the targets start coming into play in 2031. And again, they're phased. The first targets are phased in over a 5-year period based on building size. Next targets are phased in over a 5-year period based on building size, et cetera, until the buildings move toward net zero. And you can see they're phased in the same way that the state of Washington's compliance is phased by size. There are a lot of requirements. It's not, there's a lot going on. But every 5 years, the building is going to be required to verify the previous year's energy use and emissions. So they have to have an independent verification of their benchmarking. They'll have to document their greenhouse gas intensity and their greenhouse gas intensity target. That's what that little T there is. And their equipment and their action plan for how they're going to achieve the target. They will then need to meet the greenhouse gas intensity targets for their particular building type. Those come into play in 2031 to 2035, as I said. And then they'll need to achieve the net zero emissions with some narrow exceptions out in 2041 to 2050, and that depends on the building type and size. And I want to note here there's a current requirement in the city of Seattle, in addition to the benchmarking requirement, certain building types are required to do tune-ups. regularly. And that requirement is going to sunset after the current compliance cycle. We're in the 2023 to 2026 cycle. And when those buildings are done with their tune-ups, there will be no more tune-up requirements. The BEPS requirements will be taking their place. There are a lot of benefits of emissions-based performance standards and energy efficiency beyond just straight, lower carbon emissions. You see a lot of growth in the green economy and well-paying jobs. You can see a lot of greater efficiency can mean cost savings for both the owners and the tenants. Improved comfort if you are able to have better control on the environmental controls and better control the temperature within a building. And you'll have cleaner air indoors and outdoors. There have been a lot of recent studies on the burning of fossil fuels within homes and other buildings. And nitrogen is released, fine particles are released. So getting fossil fuels out of buildings has significant health benefits. So what's covered by the Seattle Building Emission Performance Standard? There's over 4,000 non-residential and multifamily existing buildings that are over 20,000 square. Oh, look, square. I forgot a foot. But they differ in what they look like. Anything from a low-rise multifamily that's just over 20,000 square feet to a high rise that's nearly 1 million square feet, and then everything in between. What is not included is new construction, because that's going to be covered by the energy code, the building energy code. It does not cover industrial and manufacturing facilities. It doesn't cover the smaller commercial and multifamily, the buildings that are below 20,000 square feet, or of course single family. And so the path for buildings to get to net zero emissions, Seattle's buildings have already been at step 1, and many of them have been at step 2, those that have been doing the tune-ups. They've been auditing their buildings' energy use and emissions, and they've been identifying cost savings opportunities. They've been tracking how they're doing. They've been making those changes, low to no cost operations and maintenance improvements. They've been trying to maximize the energy efficiency. It makes sense. You're going to save money. Then start looking at modern building controls. The more sophisticated your control system is, that you don't have lights on in spaces where you don't need them, or you're not heating parts of the building that don't need to be heated when they're not occupied. You can save emissions, save energy, and save money. And then you can start looking at changes to your actual energy sources. And that's where you can look at electrification if you've got a natural gas fuel source, or looking at alternatives to natural gas, renewable fuels, for example, until finally you get all the way to carbon neutral. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about a technical assistance program that the City of Seattle has been providing for over 2 years that helps building owners in the Seattle area. We actually had several in the early days that were outside the City of Seattle, but they were served by Seattle City Light. But helps them understand the new laws that were coming into place for the state, and that now, of course, the city, and helping them understand those laws and what they needed to do to comply. The Seattle Clean Buildings Accelerator is a program that's free to building owners or building managers to participate in. It offers assistance and helps them determine their energy use and their emissions. It offers tools to help drive the energy savings from operations and maintenance. You make changes to your operations and maintenance that, as I said, help you save money and reduce emissions. And through that program, the participants get access to experts who've got energy coaches and that understand building systems and can provide virtual walkthroughs of your energy systems and identify places where you could actually make changes and make a difference. The accelerator offers 2 different paths. One is a self-paced, self-led education path that's online with lots of pre-recorded webinars. It includes ways for you to identify emission reductions, checklists, templates, examples. It's for the self-starter, someone who just needs to have some questions answered and get through things on their own pace. We also offer a light coaching approach that's cohort-based. So we'll have cohorts of 6 to 8 building owners in groups that go through a 4-month sprint of meeting once a month for a workshop, getting calls from their coach once a month, doing an energy scan with an energy engineer on a building or two, and that at the end of the 4-month sprint, they have a much deeper understanding of the law, of their building, what they need to do to comply. They aren't in compliance at the end of the 4-month, but they are on the path, and they know what they have to do, and the coach is available to them afterwards, and then there's ongoing periodic workshops to help them maintain momentum. It's a model that, teaches you to fish. It also has a lot of information on how to use Energy Star Portfolio Manager appropriately for BEPS and for the state CBPS. Portfolio Manager has a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of options in it, and it's important for users to pick the right ones so that they know that their data is what is going to be used to compare against the targets. It's no good to look at something and think that you're in compliance when you've picked the wrong parameter. So it helps when you're going through the accelerator, you're understanding the data, you understand the reporting requirements, you're picking the right parameters. The program staff can help you do a quality check, make sure that you've got all of the inputs that you need. There was a lot of problems last year and still ongoing this year with our local utility here, Puget Sound Energy, with the gas. Natural gas data was not getting uploaded properly, so people were missing a big chunk of their energy usage. Importantly, next year we're going to have multifamily specific cohorts. So before now we've had mixes of commercial buildings and multifamily building owners and nonprofit buildings in our cohorts, and we're now going to offer a multifamily specific accelerator cohorts. So you'll all get a copy of this slide deck. You'll be able to click on that link and sign up. We've had over 40 organizations participate in our light coaching, and more than half of them represent frontline communities, nonprofits, Class B and C real estate. Here's just a few of them on the screen. And again, you can email us at cleanbuildings@seattle.gov to get on the list for program updates. We will be having new cohorts starting at the beginning of next year. So now your sneak peek. We're launching a new grant program for certain BEPS covered buildings starting in 2025. The proposed budget for 25 and 26 has $4.5 million for grant funding. And the purpose is to help buildings that are in frontline communities or owned by frontline community members, like community centers or low-income housing facilities, nonprofits, helping them move towards compliance with BEPS. It offers both engineering design support, so engaging an energy engineer to do an analysis on your system, figure out, can you retrofit that natural gas boiler to a heat pump hot water heater, or you've already done the analysis, you know what you need to do, great, let's get you some funding to help make that happen. So both the engineering design support as well as capital projects to reduce energy and emissions. This funding that's in the proposed budget follows the $4.5 million that was in this year's budget, and we used it to develop the grant program and to fund some early pilot projects and just kind of feel our way through how this could work. Out of that $4.5 million, $2.9 million went to low-income housing projects, including one HDC Decarbonize Affordable Housing Now project that's going to be announced, I hope, within the next 24 hours. And then another $250,000 that went for some senior housing retrofits. We expect that the competitive announcement for the new funding for 25-26 will be announced early Q1 25. So stay tuned. You can email cleanbuildings@seattle.gov to join that mailing list and receive an announcement when grants open. And OSC was a fortunate recipient of an award from the Department of Energy. Under the Inflation Act of 2022, We've received an award, $17 million, to help us help building owners comply with BEPS. It provides funding for enhanced outreach and support. It does not include funding for capital investments, but it'll help us add to the accelerator's offerings and provide hands-on free support for benchmarking and greenhouse gas reporting. We'll be adding a workforce liaison to help ensure that our workforce is adequately prepared to assist our buildings, and it provides support to access funding and financing. So thank you for your attention. It's kind of weird doing it on a screen and I don't even see anybody, but I'm going to pause now and see if anyone has any clarifying questions before I turn it over to Armando. Laura, I can't
Hey,
hear you.
Amy.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Let me show my camera.
You got some echo too.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
You,
Mute one of your devices.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
perfect.
Thank you. I have gotten some questions in the utility
Mhm.
of our customers using Energy Star Portfolio Manager. They have questions, but they're not going to be in a clean building accelerator program. What could be a good resource for them?
Well, it depends on the nature of the question. What kind of problem are they having?
Well, I'll follow up offline,
Okay.
especially with a lot of the great news you just shared.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Amy. And I'll just remind the group, I've neglected to say this at the start, but if you do have questions as the speakers are giving their presentations, please feel free to drop it into the chat and we will pause in between speakers to give them a chance to reply directly. And certainly at the end of the presentation, we expect to have a little bit of time as well. If anybody has any questions for Amy right now, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Otherwise, seeing none, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to Armando. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy and Laura. That was rather exciting. Can we confirm if we can see my screen? Thank you, Laura. Well, as she's mentioned, I am Armando with Seattle City Light. I am the Energy Program Delivery Manager within our Customer Energy Solutions Division. The program delivery team is comprised of 14 energy management analysts, 2 supervisors, and myself. We work with our territory's customers, trade allies, to develop projects, conservation projects, through our program guidelines, and more importantly, your needs and goals. I have a good amount of slides, but I will be presenting on various of our rebates, discounts, incentive programs on a very surface level. The hope is, if you are considering purchasing equipment or undertaking a conservation project, some of what I share will resonate and can support lower upfront cost or some technical advisory. I'll repeat my call to action multiple times because I will not be going in detail. But if anything resonates or there's interest in taking advantage of any of our programs, reach out. I'll have our contact information for what we call our energy advisors. They are our customer-facing call center for any energy-related questions. Anything on technology, programs, how to apply, so on, so forth. I'll even bottom right. These slides will be sent out as a handout, and they contain many live links. The top one there, you see Contact Energy Advisors, a form. You'll see their email, phone number. Do you want to share Seattle City Lights territory on the left-hand side there? You'll see all the way from Shoreline north, all the way to the south with Normandy Park. City Lights power mix, it's rather clean, thanks to the ownership of several dams and other long-term hydro contracts, be it through other countries, the Vulnerable Power Administrations. They yield us a renewable electricity mix supply of over 90% carbon free or carbon neutral. And we do purchase carbon offsets for the red side is not. This is why we say the best way to reduce emissions in the Seattle City Light territory is to leverage our clean electricity. And as you saw from Amy's presentation, the more you lower your energy use, so that's for the Clean Buildings Performance Standard for the state, it will support also lowering the load as you electrify to meet the Building Emissions Performance Standard. One more time, and you'll see it one last time. But for everything that I present after this, any questions you want to have on details, please contact our energy advisors at the top. The middle bullet there will show you a website that has a good amount of our resources and links to other programs that I'll speak of. And lastly, some of you may already work with the Program Delivery Energy Management Analyst. You can directly reach out to these folks, and happy to make us very available. So essentially, I'm going to present a whole menu. Appetizers, entrees, so on and so forth. But at a very high level, we have a good amount of residential and commercial rebates, distributor discounts of what we call our midstream program, incentive programs, supplemental incentives that will stack on top. And I'll showcase a brief snippet of what may be coming in 2025. Starting with residential rebates. For income eligible or affordable housing multifamily properties and residential single family properties, we have a financial assistance program called the Utility Discount Program. This is for tenants or single family homeowners or renters, where depending on their income eligibility, and we do look at area median income, and I believe we look at 80% of area median income, the utility discount program will support lowering their electric bill. Following that, we have a program called HomeWise with the Office of Housing. If a property is over 50% income eligible, there is a range of either free install or extremely discounted measures for lighting, appliances, light HVAC, windows, going from oil to electric. So again, the slide deck will be sent out as a PDF. These have the live links that will have the resources and pages for all of these programs. And again, won't go much into detail, but for residential rebates or market rate or anyone that can apply, we have a good amount of heat pump water heater rebates, smart thermostat rebates, and we even do have a pilot for demand response, where if you bring your smart thermostat to our pilot, we'll pay $50 just for entering the pilot, $20 for a winter season, and $20 for a summer season. I do believe it is currently on a wait list, but the website and application is on the link there. We do have a good amount of laundry and hot water services as well. And on the title of this slide is where you can see our website that has all of the details. For market rate multifamily, we have a good amount of weatherization resources and measures. Anything from windows to doors to insulation of floor, attic, wall. You'll see on the right-hand side, top right-hand side, some of the incentive dollars. We also pay $300 a unit for any packaged terminal heat pumps. That's that image in the middle there. At the very bottom, we do have a multifamily electrical vehicle charging program. If there is an interest in including chargers in your multifamily properties, it has, I believe, relaunched either end of last month or the beginning of this, and various solid services from advisory services. And we can provide, obviously, the charger rebates, where you'll see at the right-hand side, AH stands for affordable housing, and you'll see what we provide for both affordable housing and market rate. In 2025, we will also provide what we call a make-ready incentive. It builds on what the advisory service is, where we will pay for assessing the needs a property may have to add electrification and financially support some of that infrastructure. This is for both commercial and multifamily. but we do have a current new construction program called Build Smart, where for a whole building total pathway, that's C407, part of the Seattle Energy Code, we'll pay 23 cents a kilowatt hour for any savings beyond code. We'll pay $900 a living unit for any passive house certification, and we do have some equipment rebates. At the end of the deck, I'll showcase an upcoming program that will be transitioning our new construction program to something else. Going over to commercial, and Laura, if there's any questions, please let me know. I may not have access to the chat. But starting with rebates. Again, we have a web page of various equipment rebates, be they HVAC, commercial kitchens, ice machines, or controls, even advanced rooftop controls. If your product is in one of those categories in our rebate sheet, and it's in one of the qualified products lists, such as Energy Star, you can apply for the rebate and submit your receipt within 30 days of the purchase. We also offer discounts from participating distributors for both HVAC equipment and both lamps and fixtures. On the links there, you'll see the equipment, but there's everything from heat pump water heaters, chillers, HVAC equipment in general. And only for the heat pump water heaters, there is a $100 spiff for contractors. For lighting, you see a couple of the categories there. We'll still incentivize $2 to $4 for T-LEDs, all the way to exterior LEDs. Depending on the wattage, we'll incentivize more of it. You'll see the full products list and the participating distributors in the links there. I am now going to start with our incentive programs. And I'll start with whole building programs. If you remember from Amy's presentation, adding controls is a key steps of meeting your city and state performance standards. City Light has a existing building commissioning program that has two pathways: your traditional retro commissioning or a monitoring-based commissioning approach. It is about a 1.5 year engagement, and we have incentives that we pay at 3 stages. Initially, we'll work with implementers and customers to do an assessment, which we'll pay $4,000 for. As the retro commissioning or commissioning occurs over the course of 8 to 12 months, we'll pay 25 cents per square foot, not for energy savings, but per square footage of the property for the implementation of that commissioning effort. Lastly, if we realize 7% or more in savings, we'll pay an additional and last incentive payment for the energy saved. Next, we have what we call our pay for performance program. Consider it a 3 to 5 year engagement where City Light can be your objective third-party technology assistance partner, funding partner. We'll work with implementers with you. And the 2 options are, we'll work on a 3-year program where every year we'll have a baseline of energy used, and we'll conduct various efficiency or conservation retrofit measures, as well as behavioral measures. And anything we measure as energy savings, we'll pay at 8 cents per kilowatt hour. The 5-year approach also resets every year, and the more energy you save, the more incentive that we pay. There's a table in our program page that will showcase, if you save this percentage, will pay 18 cents a kilowatt hour. If you save 50% of your energy, we'll pay 34 cents per kilowatt hour. And we'll pay on an annual basis. But again, the relationship for the 3 or 5 year program, think of it as also that light coaching that Amy referenced in the Clean Buildings Accelerator program. But again, those are whole building programs where we want to work with a property for 1.5 years to 5 years. It's a great relationship and can also support the both city and state performance standards. Going forward, I'm going to be talking about our commercial retrofit incentives, starting with lighting. We've increased our lighting incentives from last year. We'll pay 25 cents a kilowatt hour for new fixtures. We'll also pay 25 cents a kilowatt hour for controls. If you add both on a standalone basis, we'll obviously add them together. But if you add network lighting controls, we will pay an additional $50 bonus per fixture. If you implement what's called the luminaire level lighting control, we'll pay a $75 bonus per fixture. These certainly add up. A quick visual, we worked on a project to replace 238 fixtures from the theater's back of house. And if you see the first arrow, we paid about $6,300 for the incentive fixtures. For the control savings, we paid about $3,400. And the luminaire level lighting control bonus was almost $18,000. Thus, I know LEDs, the opportunity is diminishing, but if you're not there yet, that is a solid low-hanging fruit. If you do have LEDs, consider adding controls. We will incentivize controls-only projects. Following lighting, we have HVAC. And we have various measures, programs for both either equipment or systems. We call out non-building systems or equipment. And we pay anywhere from 15 cents a kilowatt hour savings to 27 cents a kilowatt hour savings. I'm just showcasing the various equipment options there. And in this next slide here, the option of adding variable frequency drives to various pieces of equipment. At the very bottom, I'll showcase that we have what we call a durable O&M measure where we pay 10 cents a kilowatt hour for any behavioral savings. Consider having a consultant come in, adjusting your temperature set points, your building controls, and if there's energy savings, we'll pay an incentive for that. And again, on the link, you'll see various other highlights for measures. Lastly, calling out, we do have a major HVAC control systems upgrade measure. This specific measure is for, you consider adding or replacing pneumatic controls for DDC, updating building management systems along those lines, and we'll make 2 payments. We pay 23 cents a kilowatt hour once when the equipment is implemented, and then after a period of performance. Again, if your building or your property is considering a controls upgrade, love to work with you. Going forward with what we'd call supplemental incentives. And we have 2. First one's called a project development incentive. It is meant to offset the administrative or overhead time and cost that it takes to manage the rebate. We are part of the city. We understand that working with us will require documentations and engagement, and we want to just ensure that we compensate for that time. Currently, we pay 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour, or an average of 10% on top of what we would pay on a normal incentive. Valid through June of 2025. The incentive will not go away, but the rate may change. Obviously, on the right-hand side there, you see a small use case for where the PDI is $1,200. The next supplemental incentive is very applicable to either a large property or an organization that has a portfolio of properties. And it requires 3 to 4 things. Number 1 is we want to incentivize someone being that energy project manager for that property. It can be an employee of the organization, it could be a contractor, it can be a consultant, someone who will manage projects that will save at least 200,000 kilowatt hours in savings over a 2-year period. Those savings you need to be ironed out in a plan and submitted to both Seattle City Light and the Bonneville Power Administration, as they are the ones that develop this incentive and we administer it. And over those 2-year periods, we cannot go over a $150,000 incentive for this. This, I believe, applies for commercial and industrial retrofit projects. It may apply to multifamily, but not any residential implementation. It would be for common area, lighting, HVAC, central heat pump water heaters, along those lines. Now I want to speak about 3 programs that will be launching in 2025. First one's what we call the Early Design Assistant. I do believe Puget Sound Energy, as well as the Homish PUD, are working with a consultant named Wilden and have this program. We just signed our RFP with them, and we are going to be launching this in 2025. But again, we'll be working on a modeling-based program, and we'll have various measure bundles. So code calls this out. We can exceed savings by this much, by a medium amount, by a large amount, and the design team can help make decisions. And again, the idea is to lower the administrative level of effort for the people doing new construction. From what we're seeing a lot of new construction going on. We see a lot of permits being filed, and if you're in the considerations of, depending on the stage of design that you are, we can work with you on which program to have you on our existing one, to a new one. But again, the end of the message is, if you're working on a new construction project, please engage. There can be some incentive that can help lower the upfront cost a little bit. I may not touch on this very much, but we will also be launching what we call a whole home energy program. And I'll let Shelby Ketchum discuss more, but essentially this program will help administer the Inflation Reduction Act funds that will be available to single and multifamily properties. We will also be developing measures outside of the IRA funds available. Lastly, we'll also be developing a commercial and multifamily strategic energy management program, or SEM. Consider 1 to 2 year engagement, in the sense that we can start a lot of projects in that first year, but they may be realized in the savings on that second year. It'll be in a cohort model, or we may work directly with a large customer, or a customer that has a large portfolio. It will directly support the both city and state performance standard. That energy project manager supplemental incentive will apply to this project as well. Amy spoke about the Clean Building Accelerator. I do believe it's like a 4-month cohort, and I do believe these 2 programs will complement each other well. So again, stay tuned, 2025. I think I'm getting to my last slides. I appreciate your patience or bearing with the various different types of information I'm presenting. But I wanted to share about a resource called Lighting Design Lab, or the Lab. They are a training and education resource around efficiency and electrification topics. They have a website and a YouTube channel with webinars they've been conducting for the past 4 years. I actually was previously employed at Lighting Design Lab, and great fun time talking about lighting and electrification. They do have an upcoming event around window installed or saddle mounted heat pumps this November 7th at 10 a.m. One less time to drill it home. Did go over a lot of information, not in a lot of detail, just surface level. So if there's any interest, or there's anything that I did not cover and that you're considering, if it's saving energy, we may help incentivize it. So please reach out. All right, Laura, I do believe that is it for me.
Thanks, Armando. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Stop
For the
sharing.
group, I just wanted to acknowledge that there's been a handful of resources that have been linked into the chat. Thank you, Amanda and Nicole, for sharing those. So those of you on the call, I encourage you to avail yourself of those links. And for those who might be listening to this as a recording, I will find a way to put them into the screenshot or something going forward. So any questions before we move along? All right, we'll turn
Like
it over to
Avery,
Shel.
it looked like Avery had his or her hand up.
Oh, thank you. I am not seeing Avery.
It's down now, but
Got
it was.
it.
Avery, did you have a question?
I didn't even realize I had clicked that button, so no, I didn't.
Hey, Avery.
Hey, Armando. How's it going, man?
All right, I'll try to click back and forth here. I can't see everybody on the same screen. Anybody else, accidental or intentional? All right, well, we'll turn it over to Shelby to wrap up for our conversation, and he's got a lot of good stuff. So here we go.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Just to make sure you're seeing the nice, like, presenting view of my slide deck, correct? Okay, I'm going to take the silence as a yes.
That's a yes.
Yes. Yes, thank you all. My name is Shelby Ketchum, and I'm the IRA specialist at City Light. And just to, oops, bear with me as I get my bearings straight here. So the IRA is the largest climate investment ever. This original estimate right here had it at 390 billion, but recent totals are actually coming closer to $1 trillion are being flowed through the economy into different climate investments. And before we dive into all the incentives, it's really important to kind of take a step back and understand what this law really is. And um, we're going to dive into a lot of the incentives that are available for the customer side of it. But as you can see here, a lot of these incentives are broken down through either tax credits for clean energy or tax credits for clean manufacturing, even incentives for home electrification. But what's really important to understand about the IRA is, in a broad sense, it's a push and pull industrial policy. So the idea is that over the last 10 to 12 years, we've really seen the price of solar, wind, batteries, EVs, all this stuff just get cheaper and cheaper. So the concept of the IRA is to really put the foot on the pedal to that. It's pumping tens and tens, like hundreds of billions of dollars into US manufacturing of solar, batteries, heat pumps, all that equipment that we need to decarbonize. The IRA on the backside of all this is paying for the factories that are building that. They're helping subsidize those. And then on the front end of it, what we're going to talk about is the IRA pays or hands out a lot of subsidies to lower the cost of that. So the idea is, while these industries are really starting to burgeon and getting cheaper, the US government is going to incentivize those manufacturing here in the US and then incentivize us, the customer, to purchase the equipment. So what are the incentives? The first one we're going to talk about are the clean energy tax credits. So this is the ITC. This one is designed to provide funding for clean energy projects that to provide funding for the construction of clean energy projects. And while this year the tax credit covers solar, wind, and batteries, next year it becomes technology neutral, and it will cover any project that produces electricity or stores electricity without carbon emissions. And what the credit does, as you can see here on the left side, it's oh, you know what? Sorry, I got my slides mixed up. I'm jumping ahead of myself. So the investment tax credit is the one I was talking about. I'm sorry for the confusion. This tax credit is the one, it's for clean energy projects. Next year, it's technology neutral. And as you can see on the chart on the right side of this, the base credit is 30%, and then a 10% bonus for using made in America pieces or components, an additional 10% bonus for energy communities. Unfortunately, we don't have any of those in our area, but that bonus can also work for brownfield sites. So if you have a brownfield or you're near, like on top of a brownfield, and you build a solar or some sort of storage project, you can get that bonus. Those two bonuses are automatic if you meet them. That top one for the 10 and 20, that's going to be for the low income communities, and we're going to get into that. That one works more like a grant, and you have to apply for it. Now, what's really exciting about these tax credits is for for-profit entities like REITs or just a building owner, they can actually sell the credit for upfront financing and be able to get that cash like right at hand. And then we go back to the other slide. For nonprofit entities like the city, schools. And what's really exciting for this conversation is nonprofit housing developers and nonprofit housing owners. They can apply for a direct payment, which means you design your project, you build it, connect it to the grid, and then the IRS will pay out at minimum 30% of that project. You do have to come up the upfront financing to design and build the project, but once you do that, the government will pay on the back end. There are now Commerce. Commerce is now setting up a program to help nonprofits access to get connected with tax assistance to help figure out how to use these credits. And then because this is all done through the tax code, the IRS is pretty agnostic on how you fund the project. So you can use grants or really any type of funding, as long as you're a nonprofit, you get it built, you connect it, and you get that payment. So there's some exciting stuff going on with Commerce. And then the way that this is structured, it does allow for a little bit more ease than some of the financing before. So moving ahead. As I was saying, those low income bonus credits, these two that are highlighted in purple, these act much more like a grant. So while those first 10 you can automatically get, you have to apply for. So the way that it works is if you are a nonprofit housing developer and you want to put solar on a building, you can apply for the residential LMI credit of 20%. And then if you're in one of these purple areas in our area, you can apply for the siting in a low income community. But then again, you do have to apply for it. Additionally, there is a credit available for EV charging that pays 30% up to $100,000 for the EV charger, and it has that same direct payment mechanism. Well, the one catch to this is that it can only be used in certain zip codes or census tracts, sorry. And this map illustrates where in our service territory that this credit is available. Unfortunately, this map does change every year. So you have to just double check double check that your project is in the correct location. So moving on to the rebates, this is the really exciting one and the one that Armando kind of hinted at with our Whole Homes project. So the IRA provides $9 billion for states to implement home electrification programs. And there's two different programs, and we're going to get into what they look like and where they're at here in Washington. So there's two different ones. There's the home efficiency rebate, which I always like to think of as weatherization plus. And then there's the home electrification and appliance rebate. That one's gonna be more akin to midstream if you're familiar with that one. And as you can see, Washington State is expecting to get about $200 million, about $83 million for each program. And then there's additional $16 million for administrative costs. And it's important to note that this program is going to be run through the Department of Commerce. It's going to be a statewide program. It's going to be available to everybody, hopefully early next year. So what does all this money cover? With the rebates, you can use it to purchase heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, induction stoves, weatherization materials, pretty much anything that's not fossil fuels that you can use for this. You can use it for fuel switching projects. You can use it for buildings that are currently baseboard heated. You just can't use it for a building that already has a heat pump in it. And what buildings? It's single family homes, multifamily residential buildings, new construction, and rental properties. And there is going to income requirement, and we'll dive a little bit more into this, but just before we go deeper, the income requirement for both of the programs is if you're under 80% of AMI, which in Seattle for a family of four is about 110,000. If you're below that threshold, you can gain access to the full rebate amounts. If you're in the 81 to 150, you can get half the rebate amount. And then in multifamily buildings, for a multifamily building to qualify, at least half of the tenants have to be income qualified to for the whole building to be able to get the rebates. So the first one, the home electrification and appliance rebate. This is the one I was saying is kind of akin to the midstream program. It's a point of sale coupon that the state will administrate. They're going to be working with a lot of different local distributors to be able to get this out. The big key thing to know with this is these rebates here are stackable. So you can get up to $8,000 for a heat pump. You can get $2,500 for wiring, and you can stack those together for up to $14,000 if you are income qualified. And if you're not, you get half of them. So the one really fun thing I just got to highlight here is we are, us and a lot of other utilities are talking to some manufacturers of window unit heat pumps that are just coming out into the market. They're window units that can provide both heating and cooling. They're going to start around $4,000. And from everything we've heard, that the $8,000 rebate will cover that. And we believe it'll cover 2 of the window units. So that's the most details I have at the moment, but it's something that we're really excited about, and I can provide some more details when we're done. Okay, so the home efficiency rebate, the HERE one, which if anyone saw their email, oh no, sorry, from Commerce just got approved, their application just got approved today for this. And this one is more like Weatherization Plus. So and it's the way that this one works is that the funding is determined on how much energy you save. So as you can see in this top, looking down here at the bottom for a multifamily building, if you can reduce your energy by 20 to 34% and your income qualified, you can get up to $8,000, or sorry, up to $4,000 or $200,000 per building. And then there's even more incentives available for 35% and more. I'll be honest, this program is going to be kind of tricky, and we're still waiting on full guidance from the state on how exactly this program is going to work. But what's nice about it is the program is pretty agnostic on how you get to that energy savings as long as you do. Now, this is where I have the caveat. You can't layer the 2 rebates on top of each other for the same measure. But what you can do is you could use this rebate to weatherize a building, and then you could use this one to purchase the appliances. The other thing that is available is you're not allowed to stack federal funding on top of these, but state and local money is free game. So whatever way that we can layer that into these projects is available. And Commerce is expected to launch the program in early next year. Hopefully, we're thinking around spring. And between now and then, we're expecting to get more guidance and more understanding of what this program is going to look like. It is, as Armando mentioned, our whole homes program that we're currently in the process of setting up is designed to help our customers be able to easily access this rebate program and all the other ones. And I'm really excited once we're able to make that more public and give you guys some more information. It's a program that's very close to my heart. I'm very excited to be able to share once we get there. So some key things also to know about the rebates. There's renter and tenant protections that are very similar to weatherization, where the weatherization program, where you have to meet all these requirements for at least 2 years. Another aspect of the rebate program that we're very excited about is the state has to set up a qualified contractor list that goes along with the rebates. From my understanding, Commerce is expecting that this piece of the program will be publicly available. And we're really excited because we want to be able to use this as a resource for our customers and be able to direct folks to contractors that have gone through some sort of training on the state level. Really excited for this one. And then the other piece of this, the state has to do the income verification. But one of the nice things with the rebates is if you are SNAP or WIC or really any other social programs like Section 8 or Medicaid, you're already pre-enrolled. So already in it, you're good to go. The other with the qualifications will have to go through the states. Moving on to 179D, this is a tax deduction. So it's different than the rebates and the credits. A tax deduction basically is a deduction from the taxes you owe. I was trying to think of a better way to explain it, but it's deducts the amount of taxes you owe. And this program is designed for buildings that are over 4 stories. So it's larger commercial buildings, And what's nice is it pairs very well with the BEPS and building performance standards. So what does this one do? This one is, so I guess the best way to explain it is if you have a commercial building, whether it's a multifamily or an office building, and you're going to do an energy efficiency project on it that gets at least a 25% savings. And you can see here, it could be lighting, HVAC, envelope work. If you can reach that 25% savings, and you have to meet prevailing wage requirements, which is not as difficult here in Seattle because of our because we have high union percentage. So that's one piece of it. But if you can reach that 25% energy savings, you can qualify for a $2.50 per square foot deduction. And it's a sliding scale as you go up to 50% energy reduction. So how that would work is, I'm not going to do the math because I can't do math here. But if you're able to get that 25% energy savings, you multiply your square footage by that $2.50, and whatever that number is what you, as say a commercial building owner, are qualified to claim from the IRS. So the way it works is that commercial building owner, they do the entire project, they tell the IRS we did this project, and say the IRS, the amount that they're expected to get is $50,000. Then they would deduct that $50,000 from their taxes. That's how, it's a little complicated, but that's kind of how it works for them. And then where it gets kind of exciting but more difficult is nonprofits and government buildings can now transfer the credit. So the way that works, and I have this one. So the way that this works is if you're a nonprofit building, you do an energy efficiency project that reaches a 25% threshold, and you're working with a large contractor or energy designer. What you do is you transfer that deduction to them. They then deduct that off of their taxes, and then they give you a haircut or a discount on your bill that's due to them. This is complicated and it's hard to explain in a few minutes, but I'm going to drop in the chat. We have an entire webinar from the Lighting Design Lab with some local tax experts that can dive into this very useful but complicated program more than I can. And the other thing to add to this that I did it is one of the big changes for this is it's now, a building can now use it every 3 years. So with that, it fits well with the state building performance standard because you can map out projects over a timeline and be able to think of how do I use this deduction to meet each of the compliance periods. And then again, I said, I'll drop that webinar in the chat. And with that, I am done.
Thanks, Shelby. I know that the tax credits and deductions are a complicated topic, and for those that are interested in additional information, we did do a session on those with Novogradac at the kickoff of our session.
Laura, I can't hear you. Is that
Oh.
is that just me?
Hi, can you hear me now? Okay, somehow I have to wave my hand in order to tell my computer I'm working again or talking. So for those of you that are interested in these tax credit and deduction opportunities, we did have a session at the beginning of our series, and it is recorded and available on the HTC YouTube site, and it's called the IRA Sessions Federal Resources. So Novogradac, who is a tax authority, actually went through some of the very convoluted conversations around what Shelby was doing in a high level nutshell. So if you really are into it, you can dig deeper with that webinar. We did have a question, Shelby, from Side by Side for the home efficiency rebate program. Is there funding for energy modeling? And I'll just add on to that, or is that something that one of Seattle City Light's other programs would cover?
Yeah, so that's a really important question, and thank you for who asked that. So the energy modeling, with the appliance rebate, there will be a light home assessment energy assessment that will have to happen. That will all happen within so the state has to set up a third-party software platform. They're going to work with an outsider implementer to handle the whole rebates. And it's expected that that rebate program will have a modeling software component. So we're not expecting any extra fees for that one. And then for the home efficiency ones, there will have to be a deeper home energy assessment. There won't have to be a blower door. That was one of the comments the DOE got was please no blower doors. But we expected that assessment will be a part of the rebate. And just because I'm assuming this is a pretty knowledgeable crowd, if this is the question I'm getting, our whole homes project is actually looking to use that light digital modeling piece, that first one I was talking about. And we're trying to see if we can offer that to all of our customers. This is still, it's very new. This is very we're not 100% sure yet, but we're trying to figure out if that's something we can give to all of our customers, because be able to have that kind of home decarbonization blueprint with that modeling software is really, we think is really important for our customers to be able to electrify, even if they don't qualify for incentives, to be able to electrify in the most efficient way. So those are definitely some areas we're looking at, and we're hoping that this rebate program can really help fund some of these kind of bigger, broader initiatives.
Thanks, Shelby. And then follow-up question on that was, assuming the 2 rebate programs are on the back end, and I think you got that, but side by side, if you want to unmute yourself and follow up anything on that, I'm not sure I'm characterizing the. Oh, hi, Gladys.
Sorry, meaning back end is a rebate, right? So then the LISC is like a nonprofit affordable housing provider. So they kind of still have to find the money to upfront it before they get the money back, right?
Yeah, so this is what I was kind of hinting at with some of the difficulties with the home efficiency rebate. What we're expecting, and please take all this with a huge grain of salt. What we've seen some other states do is they actually have a I'm sorry, I'm blinking on the name of it. It's actually like a third party oh, there's a word for this. I'm sorry, I cannot think of it right now. But basically it's a third party that would come in and do the project, and they pay out, and then they get the payment on the other side. Because the idea is kind of what you're hinting at is we don't want building owners to be on the hook for paying for all that and then getting the rebate at the back end of it. So the idea is there's going to be some sort of intermediate there that the state has to decide on that will come in, do the project, float the cost of it, and then the idea is that for them, if they don't meet the energy targets, they don't get paid. So that's kind of the idea of what we're thinking is going to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it would be a burden for a housing provider to actually upfront anything. And so, I mean, I think it would be good to remove those challenges. Then I think the 2 programs you're saying stack on top, that makes total sense. Run the energy model, figure out your energy percentage saving, have some kind of target, and go for those individual pieces. It just seems like, wow, thank you.
Yeah.
It's like
and then I will, sorry, go ahead.
I say it's like a present.
Yes, it is a complicated present. But I also say the issues that you're bringing up with the upfront financing is the same problem we're having with the direct pay for the solar. Well, this is an amazing program and I'm advocating for it. You do have to come up with that upfront financing, and that can be hard. But luckily they're a little more agnostic on where that money comes from. So it's a nice, if we're doing solar, then we know that we can get this on the back end.
I think then the question is there anywhere, I think it would be good, maybe from the HTC and, like summarizing like anything upfront or holding, like funding opportunity. I think, thank you for all these seminar. It's a lot to take in, but I think if there's something that is on the front end to help with that, I think that would help everyone on this call or the HTC members to actually do something, like to.
this is where I'm going to make a plug for the Department of Commerce. They have their tax assistant program that's designed specifically for nonprofits that want to use direct pay. Now, it's because of the CCA issues that I'm sure we all know, we all are aware of. It's a 1-year program, but if things hopefully go right next month, that program should stay around. And that's something, if you're interested in this, please reach out to Commerce, use their resources. As many people as we can hopefully keep that program going, because the more that my idea is that hopefully we can get Commerce to see that there's a lot of interest in this, that we can get additional CCA funding for grants and the tax pieces of it, because I think that's kind of a really big funding source for us.
For but for the no tax liability would be a little bit harder. I mean, there will be nothing for that, right? So
the way it works with direct pay is you would design your project and then you tell the IRS on your 990 that we did the project. You have to pre-register it, but you get a number, you put that on your 990, and then it comes back as essentially a tax return. Yeah. We can't hear you again, Laura.
Becky, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, we still can't hear you well, but I'll chime in. Becky from Walsh Construction. Yeah, I agree with Gladys. This continues to be a lot, and it's a nice problem to have. It feels like Amy and Nicole, for the idea of the accelerator program and the sort of support that could be provided through there. I wonder if there's an option to just do an affordable multifamily cohort. Just because, again, it's and I know that, you know, you're focused on the BEPS program, but it's like, you know, owners are going to be looking at BEPS and then the Washington standard, and then, you know, their own sort of portfolio planning for rehabs and new construction. And so it's sort of, it feels like very much this Venn diagram of like, okay, you have this project and it's this size, and then it's this type of financing, like the baseline financing, is it a tax credit project or not? And so, you know, are you, based on the scope of work, you know, what incentives are you eligible for? Because it seems like there's a lot, which is great, you know, and the Novogradac walk through, you know, a great example where, you know, a project used the renewable energy tax credit and the low income tax credit and covered 90% of the cost. That's great, you know, and so it's sort of like, okay, how was it paid for? And then how did those funds actually come to the project? So it feels like there's that technical support, or that, you know, the pilot projects that are going to be out there really is going to be a lot about technical assistance, and then, you know, what are projects eligible for versus not eligible for, and working with, you know, is there a way to not work with 5 different agencies in the process? Anyway, that wasn't really a question there, but just like, this is a lot, and I think to the extent HCC and you all can work to really provide, you know, that good roadmap support would be great.
Yeah, point taken. I think that what we're kind of bouncing around, and you and I have kind of offlined this, but sort of a timeline / decision tree metric of some sort. I've got a number of different visions of ways it could look, but I think that that's definitely what HDC is getting as a takeaway from this for our members, is how can we really effectively deploy this amount of money into the affordable housing market in a way that makes sense for the project developers, because it is such a heavy burden to keep track of all of these different agencies that are overseeing it, as well as those that would have to get reported to. And Shelby?
I have a question for Becky, but I want to make sure that Amy, if you had anything to respond before I go through my question.
The only thing I would say is certainly the low-income multifamily housing is one of our priority audiences for the accelerator. We would be doing outreach to try and bring them into a multifamily cohort. That would be a priority. But in terms of trying to help folks understand the web of financing and how to weave that together, when I mentioned the Department of Energy grant that OSC has received, and one of the pieces of that is to help fund some financial support and guidance for building owners, and that will be through Seattle 2030. So that will be one way to help them, layer the financing, how far they'll be able to go into all of these complex IRA things. I don't know the answer to that. Nicole might be able to chime in, but.
Well, I just want to ask Becky if you've seen any 179D projects or proposals come through on your end.
Well, Walsh is usually on the DC side, so I don't think so yet. We would be responsible for the prevailing wages aspect of it. So
I think
not yeah, we've seen the 45
L for the new construction.
Yeah.
Yeah, because from my understanding, direct or for 179D, they could potentially transfer it to someone like Walsh, but I haven't seen that done yet, and still trying to really understand what that whole process is going to look like. So there's definitely a conversation there that I would love to dive into.
Yeah, I think it's worth like, okay, is that something that could be of benefit to us and to our clients? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we kind of had some exchanges in around 179D where there were challenges specifically on the new construction side relative to the ownership structure that is required to fund low-income housing. The opportunity would seem to lie later on after they get out of the initial funding cycle, and for doing retrofits is a more, it appears to be, I haven't seen any projects either, but it appears to be a more likely pathway to actually successfully be able to transfer those credits to the designer, which is an umbrella term, I recognize. The other concern that I've heard from low income housing developers is that the 179D requires that there is an adjustment to the value of the property, and that's not going to work well in the it has a tax term, and I'm over my limit of speaking about taxes, so I'll stop here. I'm not an accountant, but there are adjustments that are required with 179D to the value of the property that makes it less attractive to a new construction project.
I've heard similar where it runs into issues with the LIHTC credits. Yeah, I would love to. This is a topic that I'm really interested in, and I would love to work with this group to try and figure out how do we talk about this funding, the 179D, and how do we really map this out, and if it is something that's worth developing materials around. Yeah.
The basis that has to get reduced. It came to me as soon as I stopped talking. Okay. Can 179D be layered on top of the credits?
From my understanding, yes. because it goes through the tax code, and usually the tax code is pretty agnostic on how you funded the project, as long as you did it. So from my understanding, yes. But then again, this is one of those programs that's still being kind of shook out. And I'm literally at a conference right now about decarbonizing large buildings, and I still haven't seen a case study for 178D. Everyone's talking about it, but it's still in this kind of talking phase.
Any other questions or comments for our panelists? Or otherwise? Can the state efficiency and electrification rebates be combined with built smart rebates?
I'm not familiar with the Built Smart. Which ones?
Well, some of the stuff that Armando walked through.
Hi, yes.
City Light,
Yeah, I was
can
like,
can those two
wait.
programs play together?
That is actually a very good question.
Well, where's the funding?
And
source?
especially because we are transitioning between our current Build Smart program to early design assistance. I will ask that question of our program manager and follow up.
Well, as long as it's
Yeah, I know,
not,
I think it's, I mean, it sounds like both programs are being developed, but again, I think there's a lot of affordable owners who seek
Mhm.
funding from both, local and state sources. So if they're already talking with Commerce, can they?
the rebates are pretty, if it's state and local funding, they don't really care how you layer it in. It's where you start layering federal funding is where they get really tricky. And then the only other big thing is with the rebates, when you combine them together, you can't use the rebates for the same measure. Like that's the big thing. Like you can't use funding from both to pay for one heat pump. That you can't do. But the rest of it is pretty flexible. So I'm not as familiar with this. I have to apologize. I'm not as familiar with the smart rebates. But if they're state and local funding, then it should be fine.
Because yeah, the current Build Smart rebates looks at the total building performance pathway, that's C407, and that encompasses various measures. It could be it the HVACs or fans. No, well, that's the question. That's a good one.
Just looked like your menus were similar.
Yeah, the menu I showed, it's more the sales city light incentives. The IRA is more the federal incentives that we will also administer. And appreciate Shelby for reading the book and giving us the cliff notes.
I will say the one rebate program I know we do have is our midstream for heat pumps, and that will layer onto the rebates because we're using ratepayer funding for that one, and it's all happening at the point of sale. So that is, I think it's $600, right, Armando, for the midstream?
For some pieces of equipment, but even then, no. If we incentivize heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, or other equipment through midstream, at least for city light funding and incentive programs, we won't double incentivize it.
Oh, well, I was wrong there.
No, yeah, we are actually currently identifying. It's like, oh, if something's been incentivized in midstream, as we work on downstream programs with properties, we're calling those out.
Well, I'm sorry. I was wrong.
It is not an easy topic to navigate.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your participation. Any final questions, comments here? All right, well, I think I'm going to wrap up the conversation and the recording. This has been a great conversation, and look forward to seeing as many of you as possible tomorrow again for our final in the series where we'll talk about the complementary programs. And those are that registration is available on the HDC events website. Thank you all for your time today, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.